Hey everyone, welcome to Catalytic Converter Part 2, or Part whatever we're on with this adventure. So we ended the video rather abruptly last episode, and that's simply because the aftermarket Dorman catalytic converter did not fit on the Forester. It was off just by enough of a quarter of an inch where it wouldn't fit on both headers at the same time. What we've done is we've returned that product to the auto parts store and went and, at great expense, got our hands on an actual Subaru OEM catalytic converter. So this was a definitely significant price difference. It's always a good idea that when you're doing your own product, do your research, figure out step one, can you use an aftermarket product? Step two, something we did not do, was test the fitment before you go through all of the hassle of plugging everything in and trying to put it on the car. Always do a test fitment. We could have saved ourselves so much headache had we done that. So without further ado, I'm going to put our catalytic converter that we've already tested the fitment on. We know that this bolts in perfectly. I'm going to put all the pieces on it and we're going to put it in the car. And because this is an OEM product, I can reuse the original heat shields. It came from the factory with these end pieces already tack welded on. And what I've done here is I've just laid out the fitment for the bottom and the top, so I know where it goes. Perfect. Now that I've got my bottom in place and all the holes line up perfectly, I can go ahead and put the top on in order. So this will be the last piece. There is just one little lip on this fin that is keeping that from going in place. There we go. So now I've got this bolt lined up perfectly. And I'm going to go ahead and start here and then work my way backwards. Now, one of the things that I did when I was at Subaru was I had them throw in a handful of these bolts, bolt and nut combos, simply because some of these are so rusted, they're just unusable. And I'm going to start with a rusted one, I think. The other thing that I did was, because this is fitting onto an OEM product, I went and checked the torque settings, and these are going to get tightened down to 9.6 foot-pounds of torque. The other thing that I'm doing now as I'm working is putting on some of this permanent thread locker red, high strength. I don't want any rattles coming out of this thing. Okay, now that we've got our exhaust shield properly torqued down and with the thread locker on all the bolts, we're ready to put in the O2 and AF sensor, torque those down, and then that's all she wrote. There's still a little bit of anti-seize on this. I'm going to add a little bit more. Actually, that's probably... And I've already made my torque wrench to the appropriate setting, which is 15.5 foot-pounds. Okay, and now we're ready for install. What are you? Oh, right. I'm being reminded that I do not have the gaskets in place. So I'm gonna use my help to hold that open, hold that up. I go ahead and open these. My help.
Wow.
My videographer.
Wow.
My partner in crime. OEM gaskets. So happy, so much fun. Well, folks, it appears we have a problem. Come on around and let's take a look. This is not the appropriate gasket. Boo! So we have the option of using the old gasket and coming back and fixing it later, or taking this back to Subaru right now and getting the appropriate gasket. Given where I am with this catalytic converter, I think I'm ready just for the check engine light to go out. So I'm going to go ahead and use the old gasket for now and come back and replace it with the appropriate gasket later. Whew. I always forget how heavy this thing is. So what you missed was my wonderful partner in crime saving my butt. Because I just don't have the strength to hold it in place, align everything, and get it exactly where it needs to go. Now we're going to go ahead and hand tighten all these and then go back and torque them. Got that one pretty spot on by hand. Awesome. Now we're going to put these wires, tuck them back up underneath, lower the car, and disconnect the battery before we plug them in. So, disconnecting the battery, and the reason we are doing this is just for safety purposes. Anytime that you're dealing with anything electrical in the car, you always want to make sure that your battery is disconnected. Now, there's pros and cons. There's some things you can do without disconnecting the battery. For everything else, when in doubt, disconnect it.
Okay.
All right, so now that our battery is disconnected, two things to note. One is this is going to reset the check engine light that the Forester was throwing that alerted us to the catalytic converter in the first place. Second thing is now my car is going to have to relearn idle speed. So this is something that vehicles with valve timing and all the computer-driven systems just has to go through after you disconnect and reconnect the battery. Relearning idle is very normal. And it's something that you just learn to deal with. So now that it's disconnected, I'm going to go ahead and plug in our sensors. All right. Now we're going to reconnect the battery and follow basic catalytic converter procedures, which is to turn it on and let it idle for 2 minutes before turning it off and going anywhere. What this is going to do is allow the engine to warm up and get adjusted to the fact that now it has a new catalytic converter. It also is going to condition that catalytic converter and get it ready for driving. We're forgetting one thing, our air intake. We had set this aside earlier, so now it's time to just set it back in. There we go. Giant drove my car last. She's doing her 2-minute warm-up right now, and I've got to say, listen to that cat purr. Anyway, thank you for stopping in and watching this episode. I'm going to step inside, and I'm going to take my cameraman with me, or my partner in crime. We're going to pour ourselves a nice, tasty drink. Why don't you join us?